So we have Logan joining us here today, and I always mess up your last name, by the way. I know we have been friends since teener league, playing baseball. I still remember the first practice we had. But how do you correctly pronounce your last name?
So it's weird. It's one of those awkward names. It's pronounced Czajkowski.
Czajkowski.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I feel like I'm gonna add an extra S in there somehow.
That's fine. It doesn't sound anything like what it looks like. So.
Is that a Polish name?
Polish and German actually. It's both.
Very nice. We have almost the same heritage almost. You wouldn't think Shields is. We're more of a German, but we do have Polish in our blood. So that's.
Oh, really? That's interesting. Yeah, the SKI is the Polish, and the starting with the CZAJ with all the consonants and the Z, that's German.
Okay, that's cool. I never knew that.
Yep.
Well, anyway, Logan joins us. He has a podcast called The Logo Podcast, where you say it talks about everything, correct?
Pretty much. We've mainly been sticking to a lot of pro wrestling, a lot of sports and movies as of late. But we're looking to branch out. And go further into things. I know I got a couple music things coming up. I talked to actually a good friend of ours, Tom Turner. You may know him, Savage Studios. He is looking to start up his own music career. So we're actually going to do a podcast about that here in the near future. But yeah, things have been kind of slow. I mean, it's a crazy time of year with everything. You would think that things would pick up, but actually it's been the opposite. Because everyone's busy with everything else, trying to keep sane and trying to keep the family busy and kids and stuff. But yeah, that's going really well.
Yeah, and especially sports and movies like that. I mean, you think the two things that would never be shut down in the United States history is now shut down. So it's kind of crazy to think about that. So what do you talk about in the meantime, though? Like, when again, I know you talk about a lot of things. Everything you label it, and I know you like to compare yourself. If I'm am I correct by saying this? You kind of drew inspiration from like the Joe Rogan show.
Correct. I'm not really trying to copy his style. Like I said, I drew inspiration from a lot of podcasts, mainly the Joe Rogan Experience. I'm a huge wrestling guy. I have been all my entire life. So a podcast known as the Edgy Christian Show, and the Taz Show kind of gave me that inspiration to start my own podcast.
Gotcha. So we're going to talk a little bit about backstory today, about how you got into the whole podcasting and what made you kind of want to, explore this route? Because what was your main focus on before the podcasting? Like, it doesn't even have to still be your main focus, but what is the focus in life? Like, where's your goal? Where do you want to be?
Well, I'd been in high school. I went through journalism my entire high school career. I went to college. I graduated with a journalism and media degree, and then I went on to Bloomsburg to pursue potentially a broadcasting degree. I had left school early to take care of a family member who was ill. I still haven't gone back, but in the meantime, I've been kind of going back to my niche, as they say. I've been writing a little bit on the side, a lot of sports stuff. I've been doing the podcast, and mainly that's where it came about, was me trying to get back into the broadcasting side of things and kind of like the radio talk side of things. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense, and I think that's a good route to go down. What was your first podcast? Who was on your first podcast, and how did it go? Were you ever nervous the first time you did a podcast?
Kind of, but not really. If you notice, a lot of the people I have on my show, except for maybe about two so far, have been friends who I've had for my entire life, pretty much. So it's just like I'm talking to them. I'm sitting here having a conversation with you right now. It's easy to sit there and talk to your friends about stuff that you're both passionate about. My first podcast, actually, a friend of mine named Jeremy Clausen, I'm going to shout him out here. He is actually the one who helped me. It was actually our idea to go into podcasting together. He had started one. It's called the Jeremy Clausen Adventure. And I had started the logo, of course. His is also on Apple Podcasts. Check him out, too. But, yeah, we started it together, and he was actually on my first show. And like I said, with the wrestling thing, we talked about SummerSlam. And then my first actual episode after that was the one with Nash Hartley. We talked about the Marvel Cinematic Universe, and that was the actual first face-to-face one. A lot of my podcasts I've been doing over the phone. I've had 2 or 3 face-to-face. I don't know which I prefer, which I think is easier. But, yeah, like I said, it's just like having a conversation with somebody who you've known for your whole life. It's easy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, face to face with me is always better, and that's what I've always tried to kind of do with this, with the Hope Speaks podcast and with the Real Deal. But eventually, unfortunately, the time has come where we're not allowed to even meet face to face in today's society. So that's kind of, we're doing more phone interviews here at Shield of Hope and Real Deal. But do you ever have a friendly competition between you and Jeremy to see who can get like more followers, more subscribers, more more views or listens?
I think that's what it started as. We had started as, okay, we're both going to make one. And we had both released our first episode. He had a big-time name on his. He had a Harlem Globetrotter on his, and I just had Nash Hartley on mine. I mean, Nash is a huge movie fan, so it's not like he's nothing, but compared to a Harlem Globetrotter, so I think we kind of did start to compete in that realm, but then stuff slowed down on his end, and I kept going with it. It's not about competition to me. It's about me having fun and the people on my guests having fun and the people who I'm delivering the content to, getting the best information possible and pretty much bringing enjoyment to them, especially now through this tough time. I mean, there's all types of entertainment out there, and I think me podcasting is just one of them. I hope that a lot of people are listening, and yeah, so.
Now, rumor has it, and I think I remember this tweet, you were campaigning to get The Rock on your podcast. Is that correct?
I was trying. Of course, a lot of people don't know The Rock actually graduated from a high school here in Pennsylvania. I tried. I haven't really gotten anywhere with that. I wasn't expecting to get anywhere with that. But you miss 99% of the shots you don't take. So I gave it a shot, and he turned me down, but it's all right. Maybe sometime in the future as the podcast gets bigger and grows. I'm looking to purchase. Right now, I'm just doing everything on my phone. But as the economy picks up again, if that ever happens, I'm looking forward to purchasing my own equipment. I may even go into remodel a room in my house and make my own studio, and make it bigger, and hopefully it'll keep going and hit the stars as we go further into the years.
I never knew The Rock graduated from a school in Pennsylvania.
Freedom High School, Pennsylvania, yep.
Really?
Yes, he did. He actually credits the man he is today from one of his coaches. So I guess he was in the bathroom. He was in the actual teacher's bathroom, and he wasn't supposed to be in there. And, typical high schoolers, they're like, oh, I'm cool, I'm all macho, and I can do whatever, pretty much. He pretty much got into the teacher's face, and the teacher said, listen, do you really want to do this? And The Rock came back and actually thanked him because it taught him to be a man and be respectful towards elders and stuff like that. He actually credits a lot of the stuff he has learned in his career through acting, just as a person, to his moment at Freedom High School. So
that's amazing.
Yes, it is.
And then the other half you learned from Kevin Hart.
Exactly. Yeah.
It is amazing how they go back and forth at each other all the time on social media.
Oh, you can tell that those two are hilarious, man. And they have that chemistry, and they're like brothers, and you can tell that by the way they go at each other. It's friendly, but some of the stuff they say is hilarious.
It's weird too. It's almost like a combination you wouldn't expect. It's like a comedy act. I mean, you got The Rock, which I'm assuming is 6'5", 6'6". He looks like a tall dude on screen, and then you got Kevin Hart, who's 5'3".
The Rock is 6'4", 270, and yeah, Kevin Hart's 5'4", 5'5", if that.
Okay,
so.
I was off by a foot. I'll take it. I like it. My guesstimations aren't terrible.
No, that's fine.
What is your favorite memory on your podcast so far?
That's a tough one. I really enjoyed the talk that I had recently with Kyle Coleman. We talked about mental health and stuff like that. I don't mean to get too deep, and I don't want to be too dark on this show. I don't know if I want to do that, but we talked about a lot of mental health issues, and that's very, very important to me. I work at a school with children who do struggle, some of them with mental health, some of them with autism. You name it, they have it, and it's very near and dear to me because I've worked with kids my whole life. We talked about not really the kid side of things, but adults as well. So that was one of the biggest memories I had talking to him, and something that we're both passionate about.
And this is because this is Shield of Hope and Hope Speaks, and we do have religious people on here. We do have different filmmakers, and we do get backstories of everybody. I'm okay if you share that kind of information on here. And of course I'll link your podcast and the link to that specific episode in this one so other people can hear that full conversation with him. But tell us just, is there an uplifting story at the end of that? Like, what's one thing that you learned from that particular podcast, like, that he discussed with you?
I don't know if I really learned anything.
Well, it doesn't have to be learned. It could be, what's one thing that stuck out?
Oh, boy. The biggest thing that stuck out is the way that, not only in the real world, we talked a lot about the Joker movie, but how people are, like, judged, and does that make sense? Like, people are, like, judged as, okay, well, they're going to commit some kind of violent crime because of their mental health, and it's not really a disease, it's just a different way of thinking. Like, does that make sense? Like, with the Joker?
It does, and I think it also applies along the lines with not only their mental health, but I think sometimes we judge people based off their features, too, like that.
Yep, exactly. Like, you see the Joker, like, he's this skinny guy, and he laughs at random times. Of course, people are going to pick on him, and, like, he's going to get bullied, and we saw what happens. I mean, it happens in the real world. I think that's the biggest thing that I learned from that now that I'm thinking. This is stuff that happens, and a lot of people have to be mindful of it and know that, hey, this happens in the world. And, yeah, I mean, they have to know how to handle it certain ways.
And it's always weird, too, until you're put in that situation or have something happen to you in your life for it to relate. You know, you never think about this with a different perspective, you know what I'm saying?
Exactly, yep,
it's
totally.
Weird. But what a great movie The Joker was, though, getting a little bit off topic. The Joker, where did you rank it on your films for 2019?
I had put that in the top 5. I believe we talked about this. My top one is still Richard Jewell. I really love that film. But The Joker was definitely up there. I think I had said, too, in the past, I think Joaquin may have been a little better than Heath Ledger, in my opinion. I know that this is a little bit like, okay, like, questionable. A lot of people are going to be like, whoa, this guy's crazy for thinking that. But I do think that his performance in that movie was really, it was Oscar-worthy. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, it was a really good movie. I really liked it, enjoyed it.
Very big hot take by Logan over here. And I do appreciate that, actually, because as long as you didn't say Jay Leno, and I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that, because Jay Leno, I'm sure, is a terrific person, and you know, he is good at what he does, otherwise he wouldn't be getting paid. But
you see, I kind of feel bad in the sense, because Jay Leno didn't really get a chance to be the type of character that Heath Ledger and Joaquin was.
Yeah, he got screwed over. He got screwed over big time.
He was in a film about everyone, like a lot of people, and not just one person. Like the Joker, focus on the Joker. And really, Heath Ledger's version kind of focused on Batman, but you saw some of the backstory with the Joker, but not as much as you did with the Joaquin movie. So, Heath Ledger's still legendary. R.I.P. Like, one of the best performances. There'll never be another Heath Ledger, but I think Joaquin might give him a run for his money. I know that's a little questionable statement there, but.
Well, what do you think about the new? What do you think about the Rob Patterson Batman? Where is that? Is that going in? Okay, here I'm going to ask you something based off expectations. Okay, for the movie. Okay. Is it going to be better or worse than Ben Affleck's Batman?
To be honest, I don't know. I'm a big fan of Robert Pattinson. A lot of people don't know this, but one of my guilty pleasures is I love the Twilight movie. And who hates Twilight more than Robert Pattinson? So, I mean, I want to say yes, but Ben Affleck, talking about Ben Affleck, there's actually a movie I want to shout out. I don't know if you saw it. We'll get into that after this question's over with. But yeah, I do think he could have the potential to be better than Ben Affleck, but only time will tell.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Ben Affleck's that weird Batman to me specifically, because I don't really view him as Batman. See, the thing is, Ben Affleck, and again, whenever I say this, I'm sure these people are, you know, they're great because they obviously get paid to do this for acting for a living. But, like, did you ever see the movie Argo?
I did not actually see Argo.
Okay, well, that was the first film I ever saw with Ben Affleck in, okay? Ben Affleck, I swear, acts like the same person in every film.
Yeah,
like it's hard, and like some people say that with Johnny Depp too. Now I see an opposite side with Johnny Depp, but I understand where they're going with it. So to me, Ben Affleck is nowhere. I think he's better than Michael Keaton's Batman. But of course, you got oh my goodness, I just blanked. Who's the Batman Dark Knight trilogy with Christopher Nolan? Heath Ledger's Batman. What? Oh, Christian Bale. Christian Bale's still my number one Batman. But like Ben Affleck's in that weird area. Is he there for you too, or?
Yeah, he kind of is. When I was ranking Batmans, I put him, I think as my fourth. Okay. I think I had ranked Joaquin, then Ledger, and then Keaton, and then Affleck. But yeah, he's in that weird area 3 or 4 area if I was to rank top 5.
Okay. Did you see Birds of Prey at all?
I haven't yet. I'm on my PlayStation right now, and I'm looking at actual movies that are on here. I'm going to purchase it probably after this is done, and I'm going to watch it. I actually purchased a few movies. That's what I've been doing. I've had nothing to do but work and sit home and watch movies a lot. So I've been looking a lot on the PlayStation Store and on my TV. I'm actually going to buy it now after this is over. I was looking forward to that movie. So yeah.
I'm just asking because I want an opinion myself because I haven't seen it yet either. So I kind of wanted that opinion. Now people are telling me, like I've got a mixed reaction from it. Some people say it's good, some people say it's bad. Since it has Ewan McGregor, and I'm hoping it's good because Ewan McGregor is kind of like one of my favorite actors. But it's a weird area for me. Like I don't understand why they made the movie.
I really don't know either. I think it might have been one of those things where they had given us a Joker movie, and they had well, what about, because a lot of stuff has been going on lately with female type things, like females in power and stuff. It might have been one of those things, and I'm all for that. Great, have a movie with featuring females as the main characters. I think that's mainly why it was made, to get that backstory on her, because a lot of people were like, well, hey, they got the Joker, but where's Joker's quote unquote girlfriend? So
No, and I think we're all for that. I just wonder, and this is a conversation we always seem to have, and if you don't want to go down this road, maybe we won't necessarily talk about that, but is there such a thing, because I truly believe this, that there's also forced diversity, and I don't think you can force diversity in some of these situations that they try to do. And I don't know, because a lot of people, maybe that's what people felt it was, like this was a forced diversity film. I don't know. I've heard some of my friends have talked about it, said it was. Some people talked about it and said it wasn't. So you'll have to let me know.
Yeah, I'll take a look at it. Right now, that's what I'm thinking. Maybe I'll learn more as I finish watching the movie. I like to do a lot of reviews too. After I watch the movie, I go on YouTube and I check out some reviews, and maybe I learn a lot of stuff about it through their reviews. Like, they know a lot of stuff, so maybe I can figure out how they made the movie or why they made it, stuff like that. So
what is a channel that you typically check out for reviews? Who's your go-to?
Actually, let me look here. I have it on my YouTube. I don't have it memorized. I have so many YouTubers on here that let's see. Mainly Chris Stuckman and Jeremy Johns are my two go-tos. Chris Stuckman, he's funny, man. He'll tell you like it is. He'll tell you if he hates a movie, if he thinks it's crap. He'll tell you why it's crap. He'll tell you why it's good. He'll tell you why it's not. Chris Stuckman is one to look out for, and like I said, Jeremy Johns is one of the best in movie reviews. So those are my two go-tos as far as that is.
Very nice. And both of those have actually came up on the program relatively recently with Ben Klein, whose episode just actually dropped today. And he's actually more Stuckman. I'm more Jeremy Johns. So we talked about the contradiction because he said that he didn't like Jeremy Johns' way that he approached the films, like the kind of sarcastic humor / cutting, how he would cut after if he said something funny, it'd be like a jump cut type of thing.
Yeah,
and then Stuckman's more honest. If you had to give a style, who has a better style for theirs?
I would say Stuckman.
Okay.
I mean, the way he goes about it, like I said, he tells you like it is, and he kind of adds, he likes to add a lot of humor into it. Some of it's dry humor, but I still find some of it hilarious, and I just think the way he goes about it, is a lot better than Jeremy Jahns.
Yeah, nothing wrong with that. I think, because I think we can agree to disagree, and that's what makes the conversation great. You know what I'm saying? And we all have our different styles. I actually personally like Tyrone Magnus. Do you know who that is?
I actually have not heard about him.
He does his big thing, his rise to fame, and hopefully he doesn't take offense by me saying that, but his rise to fame was like the reaction videos.
Okay.
So he actually just got into like doing more so movie reacts. I hook him back from the theater and like he'll just sit down and react for like 5 minutes. His one on The Last Jedi and Captain Marvel were hilarious because he just yelled the entire time at the camera for those two films. But yeah, he's not a big like movie review buff. He's just as a fan. He'll tell you that. He's like, I'm not a critic. I'm just a fan. And he also is like he also does some part-time acting and stuff too. So he's been in a few different productions. But
okay, I'll have to check him out. I haven't heard anything about him. Like I said, I mainly stuck with Chris Stuckman, and I learned about Jeremy Jahns actually through Kevin Walker, who's another person who you had on here.
Yep, friend of the show.
I learned a lot about Jeremy Jahns from Kevin Walker, so I started checking him out, and so yeah.
So when you're making your next podcast, or let's say future podcast, do you have anybody that you want to get on in the future? Like, do you have anybody lined up specifically for future episodes? Who's coming on?
Obviously, The Rock. But no, I have a guy by the name of, and I actually just got it confirmed before this phone call happened. We're going to do it probably next weekend. Not this weekend because it's Easter, but next weekend. A guy by the name of Ryan Howe. Some of you might recognize that name. I don't know. Like I said, I've been a huge WWE fan my entire life. And Ryan Howe was on a show called Tough Enough, which features these young men and women trying to achieve their dream of being WWE superstars. And he was actually on that. He didn't win, but he was still able to make it to WWE, and he was still able to make it to Impact Wrestling and all that. He's actually currently studying music therapy, which is another big thing for me because, like I said, with autistic, with it being Autism Awareness Month, music therapy is a big tool that a lot of schools and individuals use to help deal with that disease. So he's one coming up. I'm probably going to have another one with Kevin Walker here in the future, and potentially probably one with Will Mosteller. We've been trying to get one for a while. We're talking about one of the films he was on recently for you and his boxing career. So those are 3 right now that I have lined up. There could be some more. I like to break out at least one every 2 weeks, and then work my way up and potentially maybe do like one a week or so. But yeah, that's where we're at right now.
Gotcha. So is it, just out of curiosity, is he going to talk about the Fight For Me, or is he talking about the North Strand one that we're still filming?
I believe he's doing Fight For Me.
Okay. It'll be interesting to hear his perspective because I need to get him on to do a because he actually I was going to ask him a lot about his backstory because when we were doing Fight For Me, and especially when we were doing North Strand, he talked about how he never got along with his father. So okay. I wanted to bring him on and talk about like the connection and stuff like that because he said through the character that I wrote in the script, he's like, I can understand, the kind of perspective. So I mean, Will is. I'll tell you what, Will has gained a knowledge and a want for cinematic history and like for film in general.
I can tell. Like, I never really hung out with him a lot in school. Like, we knew of each other. We didn't really like hang out a lot. But just by seeing him now and talking to him back then, he has grown. That, like you said, he's growing up. Like, he's got that knowledge. For, like you said, cinema, and it's just great to see.
He actually, for North Strand, I'll give you a little bit of a funny story. For North Strand, he actually told me, because I wrote this one scene. I'm not going to spoil the scene because you guys can watch it when it comes out next year. But in this scene in particular, he was like, it was like a conversation at like this like airport type ordeal, and he's like, man, I feel like my character would do something different. And I was like, okay, well, let me know what you think. He gave me 5 extra pages of script for me to look through for how his character would react.
No way.
He wrote me 5 pages. Now I told him, I was like, not to break anybody's heart, obviously, but you know, at the end of the day, it's still my film. I need to make these calls. But I told him, I was like, listen, I'm glad that you're that in depth with the character, because that's how Hollywood actors are. They want to know everything down to the minute of what they would think, what they would feel, what they would even wear. So I am 100% behind him, and a lot of the changes that he made, some of them are going to be in the new script, because we haven't shot those scenes yet. But he wants that Hollywood cinematic, you know, movie buff type stuff going on, and I appreciate that too.
Yeah. So actually, real quick, not to get off topic, I know that this is you interviewing me, but I actually have a question for you. We might have talked about this on my podcast, but I don't really remember. Walk us through the process of being, like, how does that work? Like, you said you had to make the calls to all the actors. How does payments work? Do you do it for free? Like, what's that process like?
Well, all my cast and crew are volunteers. So basically what comes down to it is basically I'll pay for either gas, food, or like extra stuff on set. You know, because we're only shooting, the most we've ever shot was like an 8-day thing. And that was like not 8 days in a row either, where people were taking off their own jobs. It was just something like 8 days off and on for like an hour here, 2 hours there, whatever. Eventually, you know, when we get the merchandise coming out, we're going to start trying to pay and start producing and start bringing in maybe even like somebody semi-famous for like a cameo role and stuff like that in our films. So I mean, it is a process. So payment wise, no. Prop wise, when we're paying it out, that's all on me. You know, everything from
that's what I meant. Like, how does the pay? Like, you obviously have to probably pay for all the equipment and all the props and everything.
I will say my highest, we made Visions of Truth for $200, which I call it my only flop on my YouTube channel, because I really anticipate that to go pretty far, but it never happened. But then $400 was for The New Fight for Me. So that film was made in $400, and I'm proud of how it turned out for a $400 film. But so that's the most I've ever spent that way. But the process of walking through the script, obviously I write my own scripts, and then, you know, the whole job is you reach out to people. And before I even wrote this script, this is a backstory, with Leo Talenka down at Rocky Boxing, I went and talked to him because Jimmy LeGrand's like, well, Leo was really excited about this, and he's like, man, if you ever wanted to use the boxing center, go right ahead, you know, or whatever. So I went down, I met with Leo before I even wrote the Fight For Me script, because my theory was, if I wasn't allowed in, I really wasn't going to try to make a boxing film. You know, you kind of use the resources you got. And when I met with Leo was all for it. He was like, man, take as many nights as you need. Now we took, I think, 5 nights in Rocky, and we put up the green screen and stuff like that. But like, that was the real process for me to writing a script. Never have I ever had to use a, you know, get the location first. Normally by hook or by crook, I kind of get the locations, because I know when we were looking for a hospital scene for A Mile Apart, or not for A Mile Apart, for Memory of Lies and Visions of Truth. You know, I had that written in the script, and I was like, well, I'm just gonna go somewhere where there's like white walls, and we'll pay for like a hospital bed to come in or whatever. And we got connections in the Wilkes University to use their nursing center. So
that's interesting.
Yeah, so I mean, it was filmed in a semi-type hospital, you know, where actual nurses that are learning to be nurses, nursing students are learning on the spot. So
okay, cool.
Hopefully that answered questions. I kind of rambled on different areas.
No, that totally answered my question. Thank you. Like I said, you might have said it before in the past, but as we're going on here, I'm thinking like, wow, like, how does that process work? But yeah,
no. See, totally the greatest part about a podcast, in my opinion, because I'm not one where I want to demand the show on here. Like, listen, if you have more questions, by any means, spit them out, create conversation, because I don't really care. It's for a good time. It's conversation. You know.
Totally. Yeah. Exactly.
What other podcasters do you look up to? I know we answered this a little bit, but like, is there any main ones, or like even smaller ones that you look up to?
Actually, there's a couple. A buddy of mine. Again, I hate to talk about wrestling because this is mainly a movie thing, but like I said, I'm passionate about it. Guy by the name of Andrew Pugh, I believe his name was. He has one called Calling It to the Power Ring. Talks a lot about his experiences with wrestling. First Take, I listen to the podcast form of that a lot because I don't really get a chance to be around my television. I am now, but I have that on my podcast list. And I mentioned What Culture, that's a wrestling one, and State of Combat, which goes through MMA, boxing, wrestling, and The Herd with Colin Cowherd. I listen to that a lot too. So, and of course, Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan was my inspiration, so him.
Cowherd is my go-to for sports.
He's totally. I love Colin Cowherd.
You know, I don't really know what it is about him. I mean, I just if I had a choice between Colin Cowherd or like Stephen A. Smith, I'm choosing Colin Cowherd. I don't know what it is about him either. Like to me, I don't know. He has an intelligence to him.
He does.
Or maybe it's just the hot takes. I'm not sure. But either way, I just find him hilarious. I think he's sarcastic. I think he's a lot of things. So, yeah. But no, I'm glad we know.
Question for you. Sorry to interrupt.
No, you're good.
Which version of First Take do you like better, Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman, or do you like Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless better? Just curious, because a lot of people are saying they enjoyed one over the other or whatever.
Skip Bayless, because I actually followed Skip Bayless over to FS1.
Yeah, totally. I think, I'm not a huge fan of Stephen A. Smith. I listen to the First Take because it's a big sports show, and I like hearing Max and Stephen A. Smith go at it. It's kind of funny to me. But yeah, I too enjoy that one with Skip Bayless.
Well, it's hysterical because Stephen A. Smith goes after everybody, and but I for some and I don't know. Obviously, he's been in the business and he's worked his way up through, so he has all responsibility for saying that it's his show. Just like the logo is your show, this show's my show. We have all responsibility to say so. But I like the combination of Stephen A. Smith and Skip Bayless going after it when it was kind of viewed as both their shows. You watch First Take now, and you just know that Stephen A. Smith wins every debate because it's his show.
Well, yeah, because Max Kellerman's a boxing guy.
Yeah. And
he's not really every sport, so he's just thrown as a filler because Bayless left and went to Fox.
Yeah, and Max Kellerman backs down, too.
A lot, yeah.
Yeah, and I feel like you didn't need that. Like Stephen A. Smith, now, obviously, somebody like Stephen A. Smith, his presence, just takes over the whole scene, But still, when it was him and Skip Bayless, they threw punches at each other.
Totally. It was fun to watch because you got two different stories, and they would stick to their guns. One would say, I'm right, the other would say, I'm right, and Max is just he says he's right, but then, he goes and he's like, okay, I see what you mean now. Kind of like that.
And I also think there's something to be said in, a ridiculousness, too. Because, Stephen A. Smith goes on his rants where he's absolutely ridiculous on certain things. But, Skip Bayless would do the same thing. But it'd almost be, alternating. Okay, well, Bayless won this round, Stephen A. won this round. Because they were so ridiculous. It was almost like who could be, and I hate to bring political or politics into this, but it's almost like watching Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders. Who can, promise more, who can get more crazy.
Right, totally.
And about who wins in the end. So, I mean, but no, I do have to say, I did like the Stephen A. Smith and the Skip Bayless one better.
Right. Do you watch, I think it's called Undisputed with Skip and Shannon now, or?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I'm not religious at it anymore. I used to be maybe about 3-4 years ago. And plus, working in the mornings now, it's, a little bit rough. So I'll watch, I'm subscribed to the YouTube channel, so I'll get, the 15, 10-minute, little clips from each segment.
Yeah.
So that's how I'll watch the shows, kind of piece them together.
Well, I have the podcast because I'm at work all day. So I'll throw it on the car on my way to work, and I'll listen to it on my way to work and my way home from work. Either the episode that night before or as I'm coming home, I'll listen to that morning's episode as I'm driving home. So yeah, it's actually convenient to be able to have the podcast of it too and be able to listen to it.
If there is somebody listening right now, which I'm sure there are, that want to be podcasters in the future or now, or want to up their game a little bit, what is a recommendation you have being from your first episode? Where have you grown from your first episode to your current episode?
For me?
Yes, for you.
As far as where I've grown, and a lot of my friends will tell me this too after listening to it, at first, I'm a big research guy, and I was always going into everything, looking at it as I need to make sure that I have all this research. I'm nervous that I'm not going to be able to hold a conversation or be able to talk for the time that I want to talk for. And as I went on, I started to be getting more comfortable. And the biggest advice I can give to people who are coming up is don't panic. Just go out there. And like I said, it's just like having a conversation with one of your friends. Like if you have to start by having somebody who you know that you're comfortable with, just talking to them, like you'll get more confident. So don't go into it and panic and try and get all this information and all this stuff, because a lot of people will see it as being forced in a way where like it's more becomes an interview rather than a podcast, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I understand. And and again, that's why I'm sitting back here. I only have like 5 questions prepared, and I think we've answered all of them to this point. But it's one of those things you just go with the flow, go whatever like comes to your mind.
You're just talking.
And this isn't one of those. I mean, because I know the first or second time you were ever on the show, or I was on your podcast, or vice versa. I know you were like, well, what are we talking about? I want like the actual questions like ahead in advance. Do you still do that anymore, or?
I don't now. And actually, okay. I believe you were the last episode I did that for.
Okay, well, that's good. I guess, can I take the credit of breaking you for that, or no?
Sure. I mean, like I said, like, I was nervous now. Like, I'm a huge movie guy, but, like, when I go up against not that it's a competition, but if I have somebody like you on, I know you're probably more of an avid movie person than I am. So I wanted to make sure that I was legit on my info and I didn't give everybody the wrong info. That's why I went into it. But now, like, I've become more confident in myself. Like, listen, I know my stuff, and people have told me, like, you know what you're talking about. Just be you and just have fun with it. And that's what I've been doing lately. So yeah, you can take the credit for that, for breaking me of that habit.
Awesome. Well, can I admit something? Because and I know, and I get this all the time. Okay, being a big movie buff, which is because I don't even consider myself a big movie buff, because most likely, like, I'm going to tell you something. I have not seen the Godfather movies. Okay. And, like...
Should I tell you something, too? I've only seen the one.
Okay, well, perfect. Well, you've seen more than me. But either way, like, every time something gets brought up in conversation about, well, I'm sure you've seen this film, like Schindler's List. It's been on my list for a while. I've never seen Schindler's List.
I have. Okay. Schindler's List is one of my favorite movies.
And I'm sure it would be mine, because Steven Spielberg's, like, my top director. But, like, it's just, it's weird for me. Like, I have a weird thing where I cannot, like, sit down and watch every movie. Like, I love watching movies, like, multiple times on repeat to capture every little detail. And that gets me to the point where I can't sit down and watch new movies.
Right.
Like, so I have this. And, of course, here I am watching behind the scenes, like, Star Wars. I watch more of the Star Wars behind the scenes of how they make it than the actual movie themselves.
Mm-hmm. Another thing I've learned, not to go back to the question you had asked originally, the last couple podcasts I've actually done by myself.
Very nice.
I've done without a guest, and like I've been sitting there kind of like pretending as if I'm having a conversation with the person on the other side of the phone. Mm-hmm. And I think that those work really well, because I went in with a cheat sheet, because there's a lot of info that I needed to know, but it wasn't like facts. It was like I had a couple things written down. I'm like, okay, I'll go off of this. Like, but it was mainly just me just talking. And that's another thing. Like, yeah, it's cool to have guests on, but don't be afraid to have a couple episodes where you're just by yourself and you're in your own head, because it's actually really fun. Now, it's a lot more fun talking like we are now, but it's really fun to do it yourself too, because I feel like you learn a lot more in that way, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think you understand how to fill. There's this thing called, like, especially like on the radio, they talk about this in television. It's called like the dead air, dead space. Where like you're just trying to fill conversations. I think you actually get better, and I don't want to call it BSing, but I think you get better at filling, the air around, like the whole conversation when you can just sit down and like talk to somebody that's not even there.
Exactly.
Now, some people would call you insane, obviously, and some people might call you Joker on steroids, but yeah, I mean, it's always interesting, and I'm glad you could do that. I feel like I couldn't, because I feel like I'd be too scatterbrained.
Right, like, and you might go off on tangents.
I'd be over here talking about Star Wars, which would be my go-to, and I'd end up somewhere like watching the universe on Netflix, like the series The Universe. So I mean, I more props to you, and I think that's great that you could do that, because I wish I could, but it's just
I
hard
hope
for
they turned out well. But I hope people listen. I know a couple of my friends tell me that they listen, and actually, to go into it, one of my friends, Brandon Burkus, he played baseball with us. Burkus. He was never into wrestling. But he said from listening to one of my podcasts and the info he got and the story that the guy I had on there told, he wanted to just sit down and just watch it and just live it, just to feel like what it's like. And I hope that people who are listening get that same thing, like to go out there and be like, go past your niche, as they say. Like, don't be in your comfort zone. Go past your comfort zone. Like, he wasn't comfortable watching it, but, like, just try it out. Like, if you're not into movies, still listen to the podcast, get knowledge, and be like, okay, like, they know what they're talking about. I might actually want to sit down and actually watch a movie and get into movies, and you learn a lot from it, so.
Mm-hmm. No, and that's good, because I think, and I watch this all the time, and I hear this, and I understand this from, like, YouTubers out there and podcasters, that it really is, like, you build an audience not based off what you talk about. You build it based off, like, what they write into you and, like, talk to you about. Does that make sense?
Exactly. It does make a lot of sense.
Because, like, and like, this is one of the things I always encourage, like, questions whenever we have, like, because I do mine predominantly on YouTube, and you do yours on Apple, right? Is it?
It's Anchor, but it goes through Apple, so yeah,
gotcha.
Pretty much Apple.
But, like, I always try to encourage questions, so I get some questions. Every now and then we do. Every now and then we get some questions that I can answer out and talk about. But, like, that's a fun moment to, like, either see in, like, an Instagram DM or, like, a comment section in YouTube and, like, see somebody ask you a question so you can answer it. And you know what? Those are the people that care the most, I think, that want your opinions. You know,
exactly.
and I love seeing that, and I love that feeling.
Yeah, I don't really have that chance to have that with the platform I'm working on. At least I don't know how to do it yet. And I've been doing this for close to a year. Like, I'm still trying to get used to the program that I'm using. There's a lot of features to it, and it's a lot different on phone than it is on a laptop. Like I said, I don't have a computer that I can go on yet. In the future, I'm hoping to get one, and maybe I can make a better production out of it, and a lot more people can watch it.
Well, I tried to revamp, and this might be getting off on a side note, but I tried to revamp the Shield of Hope website today. And what happened, like, on it, you can always, which is nice, you can always insert the YouTube video clips on your actual, like, webpage.
Okay.
And they actually have a section through WordPress that you can actually upload, like, little, like the play bars for, like, podcasts. You can put a certain amount of time podcast in there, like, on your website.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm still trying to play around with that. So maybe there's a philosophy. Maybe you don't got to go right through Apple. You can buy your own website and put it right through there.
Okay.
So I'm just throwing that out there because I'm trying it. Once I figure it out, I'll let you know how it works. But
totally, yeah, I'm definitely interested in hearing how that works, because, like, I am looking. Like, I have the Twitter now with it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to get an Instagram for it. Maybe I can eventually have a YouTube show out of it. I have a channel now. It's mainly on game. It's nothing like big. But maybe I can have a YouTube show off of it, and it can become more of like a video podcast as well. So
well,
I'm hoping the future holds it.
Well, I'll tell you what, you keep me updated, I'll keep you updated, because this is how you build not only friendships, but you build a community too online, and I think that's great.
Right, sounds good. It's tough now, like, with the way that society is at this point with everything going on in the world, man. So, yeah. Another question I have for you, actually, not to bring any negatives on this, because I hate talking about Corona, but what are your thoughts on the movies being pushed back? Like, are you disappointed? And what movies are you most disappointed in being moved back? Because there's a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
The Fast and Furious movie was moved back. Mulan. The last installment of 007 was moved back. Quiet Place 2 was moved back. Is there any movie in particular that you're upset that got moved back the most?
Yeah. Which is weird. I always base things off my birthday. Now, my birthday's in March, so I really didn't have, like, that March go-to film this year, because, like, Call of the Wild came out in February, and I was looking forward to that. I didn't see it yet, but, like, A Quiet Place 2 was going to be my birthday movie, even though it was in April.
Okay.
That was going to be, like, my birthday present. I was going to get a group of friends to go or whatever and go see this movie, and that got pushed back. So I would say A Quiet Place 2 is my most disappointed. But I'm not even more disappointed about the films themselves that got pushed back, because, we understand this, to the point where we're at right now with the virus. It's a good thing that they're pushing the films back. The bad thing is about the theaters. There was an article today. AMC might not even reopen.
And I was actually talking to this with Tom yesterday, actually. So we were talking about the way the world is now and our plans for this. I don't think movies will ever be the same. I think like I said, there's movies that went to the movies that were supposed to be in theaters that went right to digital. Mm-hmm. With it being that easy to get them, why would movie theaters reopen? And it scares me because you don't really get to enjoy. Like, I enjoy going to theaters, and that environment that you're around in theaters, but we may never get that again because, like you said, AMC might close, and it's going to be a sad day. But
when I'm looking back at it, it scares me more about because I am more religious. It scares me more about churches than it does about theaters at this point, because you're watching all these church services available online. And I mean, think about it this way. And I don't want to be this Christian out there that's like, okay, well, you're just saying this because, like, obviously it takes money to keep a church open.
Right.
Okay, but you can tithe online. Okay, and that's what people have been doing. So why can't the pastor preach from home? Now, I don't want this to happen, obviously, but I'm just saying theoretically, why can the pastor not preach from home, have the music in the background or whatever, and like just accept the donations to keep like the website or like spreading world missions?
I mean, you would think, but it's funny you mentioned that because my church, St. Mary's, I'm Catholic. St. Mary's had a Facebook Live this past weekend. It was only for half an hour, but because really there's no communion involved, so really it's only a half an hour. It was just weird to see. Like, I can't get used to it. Just the way I was looking at it through a computer screen on Facebook, like it was just awkward to me.
Yeah, but see, see, the problem is, it's awkward to us now, but think about it. It'll be normal in like 3 years if it goes to it.
Well, yeah.
Which is sad, and it's a sad moment though, that transition. But like my thing is, just think about it this way: it is more cost efficient. And that's what scares me most about anything else, because it's cost efficient.
Mm-hmm.
That's like all these studios having their own streaming services. I'm like, it now Netflix is doing a killer job right now, because I was worried about Netflix for the longest time with Disney Plus, but Disney Plus is getting thrown under the bus because they weren't prepared for the content.
Right.
So Netflix is back on top, and I'm glad they are. But like, it's just I'm worried about theaters too, because you're sitting back there as a person that you're just watching it from your house now, and it's the convenience of your own home. You can pay for your own popcorn, for a lot cheaper. But like, my biggest thing is, I think it hurts the movie industry, and I think studios are going to chip to try to keep AMC open. Because if you think about it this way, and the statistics are out so far, like Call of the Wild, when it came out in theaters, it made 80-some million, I think, if I'm assuming right. But like on demand, it only made like maybe 1 or 2 million. So it's still going to attract more money in the theaters than it will at home. So, I mean, maybe that gives me a little bit more of hope for it from the financial standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like I said, I'm kind of nervous about it. Let's hope that it does come back in the future. Even when this is over with, coronavirus, we're still going to have to be careful. So I don't foresee this potentially reopening until next year, if they do.
Yeah, well, and this is something that nobody's brought up, and I hope we can be the first one to talk about it. What happens to the award shows next year?
Like the Oscars? And
yeah, nobody, as far as I know, nobody on YouTube, nobody on Facebook, nobody has talked about the award shows yet.
Well, I think, and I don't want to give them an idea, because if that one person is listening to this and they're like, oh, well, we gave them the idea, and they go and do this. But it's almost kind of like what I heard they're doing with the NFL draft. Have a person there, just like a camera person and another person. You don't have to have a live audience. Like, yeah, it's you live for that reaction. But, like, see the actors at their home and just have them interview them there. And, like, I don't know. Like,
but see, but I hate to cut you off here, but we're looking at this from two different perspectives. You're looking at it from the audience perspective and like how big the gathering is for these award shows. I'm looking at it as there's no movies.
Okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think you have a great idea with that, and I think that could work. But like, what are we gonna do? Like, so onward, the Pixar film that basically bombed in the box office. Is that gonna be nominated for the best original animated film?
I mean, I can see it's on. I don't know if it's on Disney Plus right now, but I know it's digital. I'm looking at it right now.
Yeah, but do you just give it to people that like had films out and just like take the best of the films that were out and available?
I would. I mean, you have to. You can't give it to, like, for instance, you can't give it to A Quiet Place 2 because, yeah.
Or in general, do you just any film that came out this year? Say you have the award show in 2022 because it always comes out like February or January of the next year anyway.
Right.
It's like, do you just have the 2020s included in the 2022 award show?
Kind of. I think they account like maybe this year, next year into it. That's probably a good idea. Like maybe the best movie from this time frame to this time frame, like from January of 2020 to December of 2021 or something like that, like a 2-year time frame instead of a 1 year.
Yeah, because there's like nothing coming out. Like you just can't have a award show with only the 5 movies that have been out.
Right. There's a few movies that were moved to November. Mm-hmm. There was some that were moved to April of next year. I know March of next year. But yeah, I get what you're saying. You really can't do anything with that.
This might be the best year though for a superhero / Marvel film to actually win Best Picture though.
Very true. I didn't think about that.
Black Widow's sitting back there yet. Now, has that got moved till late, right? That didn't get moved to 2021 yet.
I believe it did actually get moved. I think that was one of them.
To 2021 or just to later 2020?
I think it was that one. I think that was one of the November movies. A couple of them were moved to November, and a couple of them were moved to like February and March. I know that.
Okay.
Maybe I can look here, but yeah, Black Widow was one. Morbius, I think, was moved back too. I don't know if you were interested in that. That's another. Yes, it's a Marvel movie.
There was a controversial on that because they all thought that there was going to be like, I forget, Morbius came first, and then Venom 2 was happening. And Morbius got moved till after Venom 2 because Venom 2 is actually staying still in October or November. They haven't moved, and they said they're not going to move. So the question is, everybody thought that Morbius would have an end credit scene that would tie into Venom 2. But if it got moved till after that, they're assuming it's not happening.
Yeah. Actually, it says here it was moved to November 6th of 2020, Black Widow. So. Okay,
well, possibility then.
Yeah, it's still possible to get it in this year, but is that... I mean, it's not late. It's not too late, but... I don't know.
It all, and again, this is where Disney's getting hit hard because, you know, it's great to launch your streaming service, and thank God they have enough like content from like dating back to like the 70s and 60s to put on Disney Plus. But man, do they look unprepared for the Disney launch?
Well, yeah, and like you said, Netflix is probably skyrocketed because they have their stuff together, and they were prepared, and they had all this content in the back burner, and they just had to push it out once everything went down. So
they just put on a trailer today for a Hemsworth film. Did you see that at all?
I didn't. What's
I don't even know if I get internet where I'm at right now. I forget what it was. Crap.
Was it a Netflix original?
Yeah, it's a Netflix original apparently, I think.
Hemsworth.
Because everybody was reacting to the trailer today, and it's coming on Netflix. So whether Netflix actually bought the rights to it or what, but it's never been seen, I don't believe.
The drug cartel film Extraction?
But is it with Hemsworth?
Yeah.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah. Okay, that's interesting. I'll have to check that out sometime in the future. I didn't see that. Chris Hemsworth's a great actor, in my opinion, but...
Oh, yeah. And I think... I really don't think anybody else could have played Thor.
No, you couldn't give it to anyone.
That's like me and Wolverine. I don't think you can replace Hugh Jackman. I mean, I know they're going to try. I just don't see you replacing Hugh Jackman.
I mean, they were able to replace Spider-Man, and see where that ended up.
that's weird to me. That, like, I understand where you're going with that, but it's weird to me though, because even though I like Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man 1 and Spider-Man 2. Obviously, I try to forget the third one happened, but I never viewed him as you couldn't have another Spider-Man. You know what I'm saying?
True. I mean, I like Tobey Maguire as well, but to me, he's still. I'm a nostalgia guy.
Yeah.
And you get that nostalgia from the original. Like, they'll never, like, for instance, what I said about Heath Ledger. There'll never be another Heath Ledger Batman. And, yeah, it's just weird.
I kind of keep forgetting that, oh, I lost my train of thought. I kind of keep forgetting that Andrew Garfield actually played Spider-Man at one point.
Andrew who? No. I know what you're talking about. But, yeah.
Like, because I honestly don't think I've seen those movies. I'm not going to lie. I don't think I've seen any of the Garfield ones.
I think I saw the second one, and it's weird because I didn't see the first one. I want to see the second one. I never do that, but I did. And I was so lost going to see it. But I don't think I ever saw the first one. I'm looking at my DVD collection. I do have them. I might take a look at them here.
Is it still in the wrapping?
It is not.
Well, that's a good sign.
So, none of mine are in the wrapping.
Oh, I still have... Edge of Tomorrow is still in the wrapping in my house. I haven't watched it yet.
Okay.
And that's been out since I want to say 14, 15?
Yeah, like I have a lot of movies here that I haven't seen. So, yeah. That was a good time as any, right? I mean, we got nothing else to do.
Yeah, and then you can review on your podcast. Actually, you could have a podcast based off what movies you watched when this whole thing's going on.
True. Very, very true.
Now, I got a question. I want you to be critical. I want you to be direct with me, though. Okay?
Okay.
If I'm going to improve my channel, whether it's Shield of Hope or even Real Deal, because we haven't done anything on Real Deal in quite a while because we're still trying to figure out where we're going with it. And plus, with the whole coronavirus thing going on, Jake hasn't been over to actually do any episodes. So, what's one thing you suggest that I change, or even a multitude of things?
I would like. This is me being a sports guy. I'd like to see more sports out there.
Okay.
Just because sports has been a big part of my life. As it has years, like we mentioned, we were on baseball together. I'd like to see more of that, just because of the stories that you can tell from a sports film or a movie. And I want to talk about one real quick, not to go off topic of your question. You mentioned Ben Affleck. Ben Affleck is in a movie called The Way Back. I don't know if you saw this film, if you have heard any reviews about it yet. I highly recommend it. I'm a huge fan of sports films and movies, and the story that it tells, like, a lot of sports movies are the same. You get, like, this sports star who grew up, became big, and then got hurt, and then had to step down and tries to make his way back up. But it kind of tells a different perspective on the side of things. It not only tells his rise back to the sports world, but his rise back as a person, because he goes through a lot of loss. I'm not going to ruin the movie. He goes through a lot of loss throughout the movie, and it's kind of not only built around basketball, is pretty much the entire movie, but it also helps to portray other parts of his life too. So I would want to see more sports genres, but I do like the one movie you sent me for the future, the one that's coming out.
Assimilation?
Yeah, Assimilation. I did like that. I think that's a very unique aspect of things that kind of reminds me a little bit of the movie Paul. I don't know if you saw Paul with the alien.
No, I didn't. But if you see that teaser, because I've got a lot of people that have messaged me from the teaser thinking they know what the plot is already. Based off the teaser, what do you think Assimilation is about?
I kind of feel like it's maybe not really a pandemic, but these two, I want to say they're teenagers. To me, they look like they're teenagers. They're kind of the last people left on Earth, and then they get people from the not paranormal, but aliens, I guess, are coming to Earth, and they're not really the last people anymore, and I think that they're going to kind of learn how to live on planet Earth, in a different planet Earth as it is in the future because there's no more people. It's just them. And I think that it's a post-apocalyptic world, and then aliens come, take over Earth. But yeah, does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah. And I've gotten a lot of different questions about it. And I will tell people, and this is my only spoiler to everybody out there. It's not even a spoiler because I'm not going to tell you what it is. But when they're running through the cornfield, okay, and obviously everything's a rough cut right now because it was just a teaser to capture the audience's attention. But if you, with that moment where they stop in the corn and they stop and they look around and they listen, pay attention to what the corn does, and that'll have a big understanding of what is actually coming.
Oh boy. Okay.
So I mean, I've told one person what is coming already, and we can have this conversation after the podcast cuts down if you really want to have this conversation. But I'm not gonna drop it on air, obviously.
I actually would like to have that. I'm kind of interested now. I might go back and look at it after this and see if I can figure it out. But I would like to. I think that's really cool.
Okay.
How you can base corn like through a teaser and tell what the movie's about. I don't think. I mean, I've seen it a few times done, but I think that's really interesting dynamic that you do, where you can make an object like you said, as little as corn. You can tell what the entire film's about based off what the corn does, pretty much.
Well, so. you can tell what it's about and what's coming. I won't say that you understand because the word assimilation is basically to understand or to gain knowledge of.
Right.
So that's what we named it. Also, a little bit of a funny note, because obviously this script's been in production now for a while. We started filming, obviously back when there was corn in September and October. And, of course, when I released it the other day, somebody messaged me. They're like, there's another sci-fi feature film named Assimilation. I was like, really? Like, the one thing I don't do, I never go back and check, like, movie titles.
Yeah, because, I'm sure that's one from, like, far back, though.
It was actually 2019.
Oh.
So obviously, and I'm stating this right now, I'm not changing the name because I went back and I watched like the trailer and I actually went and watched the whole film because it's on YouTube, and it's nicely done production. It's a little bit more bigger budget than what we have. It's shot differently, obviously, but it has nothing to do with what my film is. So I have no worries about changing the name.
Okay, yeah, I mean you shouldn't have to. I mean,
yeah.
It's not like you went back and all right, I need to think of a name now. Let's look at all these movies that are on sci-fi that I want to. Okay, nope. Oh, Assimilation. I'll just name it that. Yeah, I don't think you went back and did that.
I ironically, it worked. And people have told me they're like, well, your memory of lies on YouTube is probably so high because there's a show called Memory or something like that. And I was like, oh, okay. Well, I mean, it's free advertising if you. People accidentally click on the wrong thing, but I'm like, I'll take it.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, that's just a quick hint. But I'm telling my audience, I was like, the name's not changing. I was like, listen, if people are gonna raise legal issues, I'll put the word "the" in front of it.
Okay, there you go.
Or and assimilation. It doesn't matter, either one.
Yeah. Not to give you like any, I mean, obviously you can do what you want because it's your movies. But I'd like to see a short film if you can on pro wrestling. I know that you may not be as avid on it. I know a lot about it. I know a lot of people who know a lot about it. Maybe a film on that I think would interest me a lot too.
Okay. And that's one of those, if I did ever come up with an idea for that, and you know what, I put this out on Facebook, maybe if you can find it and share it to your friends too. Kevin's actually writing a 5-minute short film for me to do this summer, or I'm even talking about having him direct it, because I trust him with the camera if I can produce it and stuff like that. So, but what it is I'm basically, because I don't want to write all my own short films. I'm fine with handing out a little bit of cash here and there for writers if they want to put out ideas. But yeah, I'm looking for like 2 to 3 little 5-minute short films I could potentially make. So, if anybody has a creative idea out there, email it my way.
I mean, I have that writing background, so.
Well, there you go. If you, and again, I don't want anything major. I don't want to go over like 10 minutes. I'm trying to look for that 5-minute, because it's something we can film in like a week and a half to get it out. You know what I'm saying?
Right. I'll think of an idea.
Okay.
That I can come up with.
Perfect. And again, if I ever do a wrestling one, or if you do a wrestling one, obviously I want you on set to help me understand it too, because and that's one of the things too, which I've been thankful for with especially with agendas with Max and Jimmy. You know, they do know their own little fighting styles and stuff like that. So I mean, it was a big help to have them on set.
Right. Yeah. Totally. I mean, like I said, I have a couple people in mind too who may even be interested in being in it. So if you need like help with a cast, I have actual friends who do wrestle, and they might be interested in doing it. Like, so we'll see what we can do.
Okay, sounds good. I like that. I like the sound of all that. So. Yeah,
I mean, it's just an interesting thing. Like, it's always good to kind of not really have I keep using the word niche, but not have that one thing that you stick to kind of broaden your horizons and become more knowledgeable about everything rather than just one topic. Mm-hmm. So.
Yeah, and see, to me, it's always weird too, and I guess we'll start wrapping up here shortly, and we could probably talk a little bit about assimilation. But to me, I'm a big action person, so I love my action films. I like the agendas, which is why we're coming out with 2 more agenda films coming up in the future. But like, you know, it was weird to go to, because we went from a Memory of Lies, Visions of Truth. Of course, they were back to back. You know, they were the cop type of drama thrillers, you know, the crime. And then we went to something called A Mile Apart and Bus Ride. And those two were like the very moralistic type, you know, family story. And then we're back to agendas. And then Fight For Me, which had this, had a sports background. You know, so I'm trying to be diverse in the different areas, because honestly, film is film. I would love to do a horror film. I wouldn't mind doing a whole romantic film. But action to me is just where it's at.
I can see that, yeah. I love action. Horror is my main go-to. I love horror movies. Mm-hmm. I can sit all day and watch horror movies, and yeah. So, but yeah, I definitely can tell that you have broadened your horizons and you're doing great things, and hopefully a lot of it continues in the future. I mean, assimilation looks like a huge film, and hopefully we can talk some more about it after this. But yeah.
Well, Logan, I want to say thank you for joining me on the podcast today. Again, he is the host of the podcast, The Logo. Go check it out on Apple. Is that correct? Again, Apple. I will include the link in the description below for you on this episode.
You can find it on Apple Podcasts. You can also find it on Spotify. It's The Logo, and then semicolon a podcast about everything. Like I said, it's on Spotify. It's on Apple Podcasts. Check us out. We're going to have a couple episodes here in the future. It's going to be a lot of fun. And Donnie, thank you so much for having me on. This has been a blast, man.